Okay, so I'm going to go into the corner of the bottle opener and we're just going to tweak this bottom section now. So I'm going to grab this edge and pull this up slightly. And we'll just kind of pull this down a little bit maybe and just kind of straighten this edge out. In fact, what we might do is pull all of this up just a little bit further, like that. You can make sure that this is nice and curvy around here. So I'm just going to grab these verts. It really is just a case of tweaking these into position. Now down here, I'm actually going to add in an extra edge just here, and then move these into place whilst not in subdivision surface mode. And what this will do is just allow us to kind of eyeball the curve that we want, and then when we go in, we can basically tweak the verts to make it match up exactly as we'd like. So something like that. And it basically just makes it a little bit easier to get a nice poly flow when you're in subdivision surface mode. So I think that looks pretty much exactly as we want it. So I'm now going to move over to the can opener and do the same thing. So starting down around here, I'm going to come out of subdivision surface mode and start adding in these squares on these harsh corners here. So I'm just going to drag this down to about there, maybe a little bit further away. That's a little too close perhaps. Then add another one going across, and one there as well. I'll add one coming down there, like that. Hit space and go into subdivision surface mode, and you see both of those corners are now done. So we have a vert on either side of this one here. Now on this one we want to add in those support edges, so I'm going to add that one to there. And I'm going to bring this one just down to there, just temporarily for the minute, to sort out that corner there. This one I'm going to bring to there, and I'm going to add another one in going down this way, and this sorts out this one and this one as well. So with that done, we're really getting there. Now we just got to figure out this bit down here. Now I think I'm going to add in another edge there, and then come up and kind of shape this a little bit whilst not in subdivision surface mode. And then when we go in, obviously we can tweak these verts out until they match the reference image. So like that looks pretty good. Now I actually move these over here a little bit. See what that looks like. Looks a bit better. So I'm quite happy with that. So we need another cut around here, so I'm just going to bring that up to the middle, and I'm going to bring that one up to there. And notice these ones are a little bit further away than the cuts we had, say, here, because I want this to be a slightly more rounded corner. When we go into subdivision mode, you'll see that this is quite rounded here. But with that done, I'm going to add in an extra edge here as well, and just position these. So something, I'm going to move this quite close up to the end here, like that. And then what we can do is tweak these guys. Move that down a little. How's that look? That looks pretty good. Then out of subdivision surface mode, I'm going to evenly space these verts around here a little bit more, just like that. What I think I'll do is bring this guy down to there, and then add in another cut up here, just to bring that kind of about there. And I'm going to add one more as well. So we have these evenly spaced edges going all the way around here. And the important one is that this last one is all in line with this straight edge here, and that just keeps this nicely where we want it. So back in subdivision surface mode, just going to tweak these all into position, like that. Double click the mesh to take a look at the outline, and that all seems pretty good. So we're going to move on over to here and move these up a little bit, like so. And then we're going to take a look at this bottom edge, so I'm just going to add in a slice like that, and then add in those squares on the corners. And we also want to add in an extra edge here, and then another one here that is kind of equal distance as this one is here, so about there, and we'll move up to there for that one. And you'll see this gives us this kind of nice edge in here that isn't too sharp, but it's kind of nicely controlled between these two extra edges that we just added in. And that looks pretty good. So we now have the can opener and the bottle opener, both side profiles for both of those tools created. So we're now ready to add some thickness to our models, but there's something that we've got to do first. I'm going to go to perspective mode, and I'm going to select both of these mesh items. So I'm going to hold down shift and click bottle opener. I'm then going to come out of subdivision surface mode, so hit tab, and then double click both of the outer edge loops. I'm going to activate the edge extend tool and extend it out slightly to the side, and then select both of these loops that surround the objects. So I'm going to select some polygons next to each other and hit L. I'm then going to hold down shift, select some polygons here and hit L. I now need to delete these front faces, so I'm going to invert my selection, and that's the open square bracket next to the P key. And with that done, we can hit delete. Now, this leaves us with the very edges of these objects, but perfectly created with no n-gons. It's just all quads. And what we can do is use the SDS subdivide tool to add in the extra detail we need on the curves, and then we can delete any edges that we don't need on these straight parts. So what I'm going to do is hit D on my keyboard twice, and D is the SDS subdivide function. So I'm going to hit SDS level 1 and SDS level 2, and you see that we now get the sides. If I go into a left view, you'll see we have the sides of the models perfectly matching the outlines as we did before. So with that done, it's just a case of going in and deleting some of the detail we don't need. Now to start off with, we've got these extra 3 edges going around this outer loop of the model. So I'm just going to grab all of those 3, double click to loop select, and hit the backspace key to get rid of them. I'll then do the same on the other one, double click and backspace. And then first of all, I'm going to work on the bottle opener. So I'm going to click the bottle opener layer. We're going to go in, and on all of these straight edges, we're going to delete all but the very corner edge. So I'm going to leave the very corner one, come in and select all of these guys with shift held down. I'm just going to delete them with the backspace key. So in the same here, leave the corner, come down onto all of these guys, and there. Now leave the corner and work along the bottom, and basically I'm going to do that for all of the straight edges in both of these models. So with that done, I'm going to come back to you in a second. So as you can see, I've deleted all of the edges on these straight sections so that I only have the one edge on every corner now. Now in places where we have these straight sections going into a curve, I've left 1 or 2 edges that are kind of on the straight section, and that just helps with any smoothing issues. But you can see that all of these straight sections are now single polys, and that's going to make things a lot kind of lower polygon, a lot easier to deal with, and a lot easier to fill in a second. Now over here, I'm just going to quickly run you around the model just to show you what I've got. So all of these are single edges here. We've got a large section in the middle with no edges. All of these are pretty much intact around here. And then I've just left a couple on this lower edge, and then all of these guys are ones as well. I'm now going to go in and fill in the sides of these 2 tools, and also inset those side polygons slightly, and I'll do that and come straight back. So I've gone in and created these polygons in the sides, both sides of these tools, and I've also inset them slightly, which gives us this row of polygons around the outside, which will help with any smoothing errors. Now what we need to do now, apart from deal with a little problem up there, is basically go around and just make sure that we're not having any overlapping vertices anywhere or anything like that. Now I know for a fact, because I had a quick look, that we've got a few down here to take care of. So I'm just going to grab those 3 and come up and click join averaged, and then do the same on the other side as well. So we grab those 3 and join averaged. With that done, we can start thinking about joining these up into quads. Now at present, both sides are exactly the same, so I'm going to grab both of these tools by double clicking in poly mode. I'm going to come up to basic, center selected on X, and then we can turn on our symmetry option. It's then a case of going in and just filling in the quads wherever you can. Essentially what I'm going to do is fill in quads everywhere, and then delete the polygons that overlap the indents that we're going to have to add in. So everything is going to be roughly quadded before we do any of that. Now over here we're going to have a little bit of an issue. So what I'm going to do is quad up to about here. So I might actually draw a line in there. So just to the left of this inset, and then I would just drag it down to around about there, and then draw one of these down to that corner, and that leaves us this polygon in here with which to kind of add in our indent. Now on this one I'm going to do roughly the same thing. I'm going to add in using the slice tool, just to slice down there like that, and then over here I'm going to join up this vert with this vert here, and this just gives us this section with which to fill in this indent. But for everything except for these polys, and that includes the other side as well, I'm going to quad them up and cut that up and come straight back. So we're looking for quads and tries, remember, using the edge slice tool, which is C on your keyboard. So as you can see from our statistics panel, I only have 2 polygons left with more than 4 verts, and they are the ones that are in front of the indent that we're going to add in a second. Now on this left one, I just want to draw attention to this. In order to join up the back, I've added in 3 extra edges on this part, and these are going to link into the very top of this indent. On the can opener we actually have a lot of edges at the top anyway that are going to help us kind of join those things together. So I just added a couple extra on this one to give us some room to play with. Now we're going to go and get that indent. We're not going to make it from scratch. We're going to go and turn on the bottom tools layer. I'm going to toggle that down quickly. We're going to turn off everything except for the pokey thing, because that's the one that is the polygon version of the indent. It's not the SDS version, it's the kind of polygon that we use the SDS subdivide tool on. So what I'm going to do is lasso select around all of those polygons. I'm going to hit Control C and then come up to the bottle opener and hit Control V to paste them into position. I'll go back into a right view and turn off our bottom tools layer. Sorry, a left view even, and then we're going to move this up into place. So I'm going to rotate that guy around, and it is currently a little bit too big, though a little bit smaller on this one, so I'm just going to scale that down. About 80%-ish is good, so about there looks pretty cool. And then with that done, we can just make sure that it's basically facing the right way. So we want it on this side but facing the other way around. So I'm going to hit the scale tool. I'm going to come over here to the X scale and go to the front of it and hit a minus key. Now this will flip all these polygons, so with that done we're going to have to hit F to flip them back round the right way. Now with that in position, we can go to a top view and just pull it into place like so. So we just want this to be right in line with the side our tool like that. And then what I'm going to do is copy that, so Control C, I'm going to go into our can opener layer and Control V to paste it in. I'm then going to select it and move it across, go back into a left view, and then we can position it and rotate it like so. So about there looks pretty good to me. So with that done, we can basically, on the can opener layer, delete this poly, and on the bottle opener layer we can delete this poly. So all that's left is for us to go in and fill in this gap. And it really is just much more of the same, to be honest. What we're going to do is basically choose 2 that seem fairly obvious. Now we're going to choose, I'm going to choose those 2 for this one. Go to an edge menu, the bridge tool, and right click to bridge those together. I can then double click and it will select this entire edge loop, and then if I hit P it will fill that in with a blank poly that we can then go in with the edge slice tool and cut up into quads and tries. Now at the moment you'll notice that this up here is extremely thin, so what I'm going to do is basically cut halfway up into that like so, and then down the other side, and then we're just going to delete these extra edges in here that we don't need, and that just provides us a little bit extra room to play with up there. We don't have an awful lot, but that should do the trick. Just going to check over here on the other one. What I'm going to do is take this, in the can opener layer, sorry, select this edge and this edge. I'm going to bridge these 2 together, then double click the edge loop to select the entire thing and hit P to fill it with a poly. and then we've got a lot more space on this one to play with. So it really is just a case of going in and cutting up these polys into quads and tris. So I'm going to continue doing that, and I'll come back to show you what I've got when I'm done. So as you can see, I now have no polygons with more than 4 verts, and if we go in and take a look, you'll see because we added in this outer ring of polygons, we can afford to be perhaps a little bit more awkward in here than I would have initially liked. However, these are all quads and tris all the way around. We've added in a minimal amount of edges, so we're using a minimal amount of polygons, and the indent is fully integrated. And that's right for the can opener, the bottle opener and the can opener. So you can see I've just gone around and I've got a lot of these kind of triangular quads all over the place, and they're kind of a really useful thing for ensuring that you keep a very low amount of polygons. So now it's a case of moving these into position. So I'm going to bring back the main segments and the blocks. I'm going to go into a top view. I'm going to grab both of these guys, and these actually sit right in this end bit here. So I'm going to grab them, activate the move tool, and right click in the viewport. I'm going to drag them to the side, and we want it to be just up against this very end plate here. So something like that. Now, instead of shrinking them down by scaling, I want to maintain the size of this indent. So instead, I'm just going to grab this right-hand side. So I'm going to switch to vert mode and grab all of these right-hand verts. Activate the move tool, and then move these into position. So I'm just going to move them in like that. So leave a little bit of space for them. Go back to perspective mode. You can see they're right there in place. That's exactly where we want them. So I'm just going to bring back our main side plate, and you can see they just poke up just over the top there, like they should. Creating the knife is actually remarkably easy, but we're going to use a slightly different technique. Instead of using a pen tool to create the entire object, what we're going to do is create the kind of curved end of the object with the pen tool. Then we're going to use subdivision surfaces to shape it. Then we're going to freeze it with the STS subdivide, and then when we've cleaned it up, we're going to extrude this back end to make this block section here. So I'm going to come up to the basic tab, and in our new knife layer, I'm going to click on the pen tool and start drawing out this shape. So I'm just going to add in a few objects here, and one at the end. And then I want the same amount of verts coming back the other way. I'm trying to space them fairly evenly, like that. So that looks pretty good to me, so I'm going to hit space to drop the tool. And the one thing I'm going to do is add a slice just down here, like that. Now you notice I can't get quite the right angle, so I'm going to turn off right angle snap, and then we can come in and drag those to there. And this just stops this section from going too haywire while we're working on this bit down here. So with that done, I'm going to hit tab to go into STS subdivide mode. I'm going to turn back on our show vertices option so we can see our verts, then move these up into position. And it shouldn't take too long, I don't think. Just to kind of tweak these into the correct shape, like so. With that done, the only hard part really is this end section. So I'm going to go out of subdivide, and basically I'm just going to draw an edge across there like that. So we have these 3 points here. I'm going to go back to subdivide mode, and then we can just move these into place, like so. So move that one, and slightly move that one. And a bit of tweaking, we could double click the mesh and see the outline that we've got. Now I just want to check down here, this is all looking good. So with our mesh selected, I'm going to either come up to our mesh edit tab, or you can hit D on your keyboard for the STS subdivide. So I'm going to hit D once, and then I'm going to hit D twice, so one more time. With that done, we can turn tab mode off, and just like before, I'm going to select the outer edges, Z for the edge extend, right click to activate and move it to the side. I'm going to select this loop, hit L to select the entire thing, and then hit the open square bracket to invert selection and delete these faces here. And that gives us a perfect outline of the knife shape that we're looking for. Now we can go in and clean things up if needs be. I'm just going to delete this very end edge here so we have a bit more of a bevel at the end of the knife. Then at this edge, I'm just going to delete all of these polygons here. And what this will do is actually I hit backspace key then to delete those polygons, and what that does is leave the vertices behind. So I'm going to undo that, and instead I'm just going to hit the delete key to get rid of them. Now with this done, what we can do is use both of these edges, and in a right view we can extend them into position. So I'm going to grab them both and move them down like that. We can grab this top one and move it out. And with that top edge selected, I'm just going to select that guy. I'm going to edge extend down into position. Shift click, edge extend again. Shift click to get to this bottom bit. Shift click again. And I'm just bringing this round to meet up with that other edge essentially. And what this has done is it's gone very quickly from an SDS model. We've frozen it, and then we're adding on this polygonal kind of back end to it. And with this done, we can come in and just bridge both of those edges like so. We can then grab the side, both sides actually. Let's grab that edge loop and shift select the other edge loop and hit P. We should have polys on both sides now. With both of those polys selected, I'm going to hit B, right click, and then inset them ever so slightly, like that. With that done, we can go and check that nothing's kind of messing up at the end here, and you can see that something clearly is. So what I'm going to do is grab these two verts, like so. You might have to lasso select that other one. And I'm going to move them using this red arrow just close like that, so you can see roughly what's going on. You see it's getting a little bit easier to see what the poly layout is. So it looks like we have all of these guys joining up together. So what I'm going to do is grab all of these and both of these, and I'm going to go to vertex join averaged and OK. And then I'm going to do the same on this side, so grab all of these and these two, join averaged and OK. We can then grab this outer edge and this outer edge and bevel. So B, right click to activate, and drag out a slight bevel there like so. Just want to come in and make sure that this end bit's looking okay. It does look a bit funky down there, so I'm just going to go to a side view and then manually come in and just tweak this a little tiny bit. So I'm just going to lasso select all of these verts and just move them until they're a little bit more lined up. Now I'm going to grab this one as well and just move that down slightly. Just tweak that one so we get a bit more of an even bevel going around the outside. So I'm just going to grab that guy and just move that down a little bit like so. We get a much more kind of even edge at the end there. Now we're going to go into a right view and take a look to see where our indent is. Now I'm going to block that off from the rest of the model with two cuts like so, and then we can go in and quad up the rest of the model. And I'll do that and come right back. Now just before we quad up this end section, I'm just going to grab these edges in here and give them a quick bevel. So I'm going to grab all of these, B for bevel, right click and drag out a slight edge bevel. And we just make sure that we put those edges in before we quad them up, and that just saves us doing more work than we need to. So I'm going to quad these up and then come straight back. So as you can see, everything is now quadded up except for this middle section where we're going to have the indent. So we need to go and find that again. So I'm going to go into the bottom tools, come down to our pokey thing, turn off everything else temporarily. I'm going to go to a right view, lasso select around that guy, Control C to copy, come down into our knife layer and Control V to paste. We can double click and move it up into position. Now I'm going to hide the bottom tools and rotate this into place and scale it down slightly. It's just a case of exactly the same as before. We're going to line it up, make sure it's right where we want it, so just there. Then I'm going to get rid of this polygon, and it's just a case of finding a decent edge to start on. So that one looks as good as any, so I'm going to go to Edge, Bridge, and right click. I'll then double click this edge loop and hit P to fill in the polys, and then we can go in with the Edge Slice tool and quad it up. So I'm going to do that and then head back. So you can see once again I've got a lot of these triangular quad polygons at the top here, which are really saving a kind of poly count really, because we'll be able to connect up to these existing edges. So with that done, we can now move our knife into position. So I'm going to bring back our main segments and blocks, go to a top view, I'm going to double click our knife, and we're going to bring it all the way to the right. So I'm going to activate the move tool and right click in the viewport, come to the edge, and we're just going to bring it to the edge of this block here. So somewhere like that. Looks pretty good. Now our indent is on the right here, so we want to select the left hand side. So I'm going to select all of the left verts, and if we select any by mistake in the indent, I'm just going to hold down Control and lastly select those guys. Now I'm going to continue down, select all of these, get back down, just make sure we're getting them all like this. Just hold down Shift and just get them all like that. We should have every single one of them. Then we can go to the top view and just move these ever so slightly to the left, like so. As long as we leave a bit of a gap, we should be okay. So that is our knife in position, and this is quite good because you can see that it now leans up against these blocks that we created earlier. So with that done, we can move on to one of the saws. Now the wood saw is another tool that looks a lot more complicated than it actually is. I'm going to come up and create a side profile with the pen tool to begin with. So in our new wood saw layer, I'm just going to quickly draw out these points like so. When I get to the teeth, I'm going to go into the first valley and come along to the end and go into the last valley and then put a point there as well. Now we're not going to use SDS mode for this, so I'm going to put a point about there. So this is roughly following the very start of this part of the curve, the very start of this part of the curve as well. And with that done, I'm going to select this vert here and bevel it. And with a round level of 3, we should be able to fairly closely match that reference. Now we're off a little bit there, but what I can do is come in and just ever so slightly tweak these verts into place. So I'm going to grab the edge and just slightly move it. And this is kind of showing the benefits of SDS mode, really, in the sense that you know, this isn't a very complicated curve, but if it was any more complicated than this, it would be pretty much a nightmare to tweak it like this. But that looks pretty good to me. These sections, maybe a little bit of tweaking, but that looks pretty good. We've got maybe an extra edge that is needed up here, so I'm just going to very quickly draw an edge from the top of here to around here and just pull that up into position. I'm going to add an edge in from this bottom of this valley to the top of the saw. I'm going to add one from the bottom of this valley to the top of the saw. And I'm going to add one going to the very end, like so. The same over here, to about the same. So this is a nice straight line along here. We're going to add in another edge just above it. You can kind of see the line on the reference image that we're following. So it's all fairly simple stuff right now. With that done, I'm going to select one of these edges and hit Alt-C for the Loop Slice tool. Now we need an extra 14 edges in here, which leaves us with something like this. So you see we have an extra edge at the bottom of each one of these valleys. Now for the minute, we're not going to do anything about it. We're going to move this into position and then give it some width first. So I'm going to double click it, and I'm going to go into the top view. I'm going to bring back our main segments and our blocks. And the wood saw is in fact in this middle column here. So I'm going to move this ever so slightly to the side. Remember to leave a bit of space, X for extrude, and pull it out to give it some width. Now with that done back in perspective mode, I'm going to lose our blocks and main segments, and I'm going to select all of these polygons down here. So you can select a few in a row and then hit the up key on your keyboard. I'm going to hit B for bevel, and with the group polygons option set to off, I'm going to hit the right mouse button to activate. I'm going to pull these out. I'm going to go into a side view to check our reference. We want to pull this out to there. And then I'm going to activate the scale tool, and with scale mode set to local, I'm going to scale this down And what the local tool does is it applies the transformation to each element individually. So each polygon is getting scaled down. They're not all getting scaled down from a single point. And it's a very useful tool to get the hang of. And with those in position, I'm going to go to perspective mode. And we need to scale down this poly and this edge. So I'm going to start with this poly here. And we're just going to scale this down. I'm going to come back to automatic mode and scale it down on the X until it's the same width as this guy here. So around about there. We'll then come to this end and grab this edge and do the same thing. And now I'm going to select all of these edges, this one here, this guy in all of the valleys coming up. And once you've selected a few, you can tap up on your keyboard to continue your selection pattern. So we're going to select all of those guys up to the end, and then also this very end guy here. And we're going to activate the scale tool and just scale these in slightly on the x-axis so we get a nice straight edge down there like so. With that done, I'm going to drop the scale tool and we can start looking at beveling some edges. To begin, I'm going to select some of the polys along this edge. I'm then going to hit L to loop them, and then holding down Shift I'm going to come up and click the plus bounds key, and that selects the edges along the extent of the polygons we just had selected. I'm going to come in with the Shift key and then add in any extra edges that it missed. Now on this section, what I'm going to do is come to a side view, and I think I'm just going to select all of these edges in here so we can get all of these guys and bevel them, and that will ensure that we get a nice poly flow in there. I think might even want to get the next one as well, but we'll see what happens there. So go back to perspective. I'm going to add in all of these as well, so I'm going to select 2 on this loop, then hold down the up arrow on my keyboard. We'll then select that entire loop. We can come to this end and select these hard edges now. Make sure we get this guy as well. And then with all of these selected, I'm just going to have a quick check once over. That looks good. I'm going to hit B for bevel, right click, and drag out an edge bevel. And I'm going to zoom right in on these teeth just to make sure that we don't get any overlapping verts. So with that done, I'm going to hit the space bar to drop the tool. And you can see up here we've got all of these little kind of 5-sided polygons. Now an easy way to select all of them would be to deselect them and come down to our statistics panel and click the plus arrow next to the more than 4 verts. So if I click that, you can see we've got 38 faces selected. So that includes all of these guys as well. So I'm actually going to deselect these end ones and also deselect these big ones that we have over here as well, because we're going to fill those in manually. So just for these small ones selected, I'm going to go to the polygon menu and click the triple key. Now you can see we've only got 6 polygons left. So I'm going to come to this end. And let's see what we can do. So I'm going to start by going to a side view. We need to add in a couple of extra edges. I'm going to start by selecting this edge, and with the loop slice tool I'm going to come in and add an extra edge loop just about there. With a slice tool I'm going to do the same thing down here, and then I can bring in these verts to make this little indent at the end here. What I'm going to do is just bring those in, just position them ever so slightly. I'm just going to bring this middle 2 just in a tiny bit more like that. And then I'm going to double click this edge loop and double click this edge loop, B for bevel, right click and drag out a slight bevel on it, which makes it look a little bit nicer. And then we can come in and start thinking about quadding up these end polygons. So I'm going to do that and come right back. Now with those sections quadded up, all that's left is to come into a right view. I'm just going to sort out some of these little bevels in here. You see we're a little bit kind of skew-if there. I'm just going to lasso select those guys and move those up ever so slightly. And I'll do the same to these 2 as well. Now with that done, we can go into a perspective view and bring back our knife and bottle opener and can opener and take a look to see what we've got. So our wood saw is now done. Now the metal saw uses exactly the same techniques as the wood saw. You basically create the main shape using the pen tool. We've got a little bit of a curve down here, but we use the bevel for that. We're not going to use SDS mode. We'll then create the extra edges needed for the teeth, bevel some items, and move it into shape. The only difference is that the metal saw has the indent needed for your thumb, so we'll have to grab that off of the knife. So I'm going to quickly run through this. So with the basic tab and the pen tool, I'm going to add in the extra edges, like so. Add an edge on the transition between the straight line and the curve. And I'm going to add an edge out around about there. And then I'm going to pull this in. And I'm going to add one just there, like so. And then I'm going to add one there, just on the end of this valley. One there, and one there. Now with that done, we can go in and add an extra edge from there to there, which means we can drag this up slightly. We'll do the same thing over here, like so, and we'll come in and bevel that vert. With a round level of 3, and we'll actually meet up very nicely just there. So I'm actually going to move this one ever so slightly to the left, like that. Now with that done, we can start adding in our cuts for these guys. So what I'm going to do is select one of these edges, Alt-C for the loop slice tool, and right click. We can then drag these up until we get the correct amount. And essentially what I'm looking for, I think, is maybe 17? 17 looks pretty good to me. So with 17 cuts being added, we're now going to go to the top view, select all of these polygons, bring back our main side plate and segment, as well as our blocks layer, and we're going to move this into position. Now the metal saw is the one to the right of the middle, so I'm going to activate the move tool and move this out, like so. X for extrude, and give it some width. Go back to perspective mode, hide these guys, and then we're going to grab these polys in here to make the teeth. So I'm going to select 2, hold down the up arrow on my keyboard to select all of them. Now the difference with this one is that when we bevel, we're going to turn off group polys, and we're going to bevel it in slightly to begin with. So I'm going to hit right click to activate. We're going to inset it ever so slightly, so we kind of match the width of these teeth here. So you can see these yellow lines are matching the width of these teeth. Now when they do, I'm going to pull them out ever so slightly, like so. I'm going to shift click and drag it out a little bit further, then inset once again, so like that. Now it's not perfectly matching our reference, but we have the same number of teeth, and that is the important thing. So with that done, I'm just going to maybe inset that a tiny little bit more. I'm going to hold down Control to make that nice and precise. Now with this done, there is a difference on this mesh. Now at present you can see that our bottom polygons are slightly the wrong way around, so I'm going to activate the scale tool and scale these over on the X, but with negative scale turned on, I'm going to scale them slightly in the opposite direction to uncross those bottom verts, like so. Now this is the fun part. I want to select the first one of these teeth, then the third one, and with that done I'm going to hit the up arrow to select it to the end. I'm going to pull these guys to the left, like so. I'm then going to grab all of the other teeth, so select 2, hit the up arrow, and I'm going to drag these guys out to the right, like that. And that's what makes our metal saw so gnarly, kind of corrugated teeth in there like that. So all that remains really is to go in and bevel any hard edges and to quad up any large areas like this. And I'm going to do that now and come straight back. Now as you can see, just like before, I've added quad polygons into this front section. I've then selected all of the edges, including all of the edges that make up the teeth, and I'm going to bevel those now. So I'm going to hit B, right click to bevel, and kind of drag in the viewport slightly. I'm just going to watch these teeth to make sure we don't get any overlapping verts. So about there. Hit space to drop the tool. We now have some of these n-gons, so I'm going to come down and click the plus key next to more than 4. I'm going to get rid of these selected larger polygons at the very end here, like so. I'm then going to hit polygon, triple, and then I'm going to come in and take care of all of these guys. I'm going to merge these 3 up into that one, so vertex join, like so. I'm going to do the same on the other side. So we're going to merge these 3 into this one, join, and OK. And then I'm going to grab both of them and move them slightly in a side view, just to kind of even out this bevel a little bit. So something like that looks pretty good. Now if I click the plus next to more than 3, you can see we've got another bit of an issue over here. So we've got these 2. So I think actually what I'm going to do is merge these 2 as well. So I'm going to select both of those and join averaged and hit OK. And yeah, that works brilliantly. So I'm going to move that ever so slightly. And then you see we've got a nasty smoothing error there, but I'll take care of that in a second. Now that we've beveled all of these edges, I'm going to come in and join up some quads like so. To there. And we'll go to there. And this one to there. I'm then going to select all of these side polygons. So all of these ones down here, as well as all the ones on the other side, but I'm not going to select the teeth, so just these guys. I'm going to activate the bevel tool, turn on group polys, right click, and I'm just going to inset them ever so slightly, and that will take care of any of those smoothing errors that we were having. Now all we have to do is go in and grab the indent from the knife layer and paste it into this one. So I'm going to activate the knife layer and click it. I'm then going to lasso select in poly mode around our nail indent, Control C to copy, reactivate the metal saw layer and hide the knife layer, and then Control V to paste it in. Now the indent is actually not on this reference because it's on the other side of the saw. So what we're going to do is select it, go to perspective mode, we're going to move it to the other side and rotate it on Y 180 degrees. Now if we go into a left view, we can start moving it into position. Now it's actually between this 3rd and 4th tooth here, and it matches the angle of this top edge. So I'm going to rotate it to about there and move it up to about there, like that. And that looks pretty much perfect. So what I'm going to do is delete these 5 polygons here. I'm then going to reselect our indent, and we want to move it into the correct position. So in the top view, I'm going to activate the move tool and move it right until it sits just on that edge, just there, like so. So with that in position, it's exactly the same as before. We're going to select an edge that looks promising, so maybe these 2 here. I'm going to go to Edge, Bridge, and right click. I'm going to double click this edge loop and hit P to fill it in, and then I'm going to go in and separate these up into quads and tris. So as you can see, this is now connected up using quads and tris. So that is our metal saw done. Now looking back over the model, I've just realized that I forgot to bevel some of the edges on the bottle opener and the can opener. So what I'm going to do is select the outer loops by selecting a few polygons and then hitting the L key. I'm going to go to Shift and plus bounds. Now with that done, I'm also going to come in and select some of these harder edges up here, like so, and then some of these guys on here as well. So these guys up here, and then I'm going to hit B for bevel, right click, and just bevel these guys out a little bit like that. And with that done, those guys are now properly complete, and we can move on to the scissors.